Hey, what's going on, guys? It's FPL Yusuf here, and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be going over my Game Week 28 transfer plans ahead of next game week's deadline. We're going to cover a lot in this video today, so we've got some key questions surrounding certain players' injuries, certain players' suspensions. We'll talk about fixtures coming up and different teams to be targeting. Go over how we got on in Game Week 27, despite the fact it was probably my worst game week of the season. And I will show you guys what my sort of current plans are for Game Week 28 and what the team's looking like going into that game week as well. So I hope you guys do enjoy this video. If you do, please don't forget to drop a thumbs up and subscribe down below. But without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me today on my YouTube channel for another video. Before we get into this one, if you guys wouldn't mind dropping a thumbs up and subscribing down below, it would be greatly appreciated. So game week 27, it was arguably my worst game week of the season. We got an overall game week rank of 9.9 million, which after I think the game in total has about 11 million players, so that can kind of just put into words as how bad it went. So we only got 42 points overall. It started off like really bad. Like the captaincy really just let us down. You know, Cole Palmer, I'm so gutted because he should have come back with more. You know, definitely a goal. Maybe should have had two and an assist. There's very few times that you go against Mo Salah this season. And I looked at this game week as one of them, saying, you know, he's got a difficult game against Newcastle. And we actually did make the right call because Salah only got himself an assist against Newcastle. I thought that one might be a little bit of a closer game than what it was, but I just thought that Chelsea would go and dominate Southampton, which they did. They scored 4 goals and Palmer had a hand in none of them. So yeah, that kind of started our game week off quite badly. The rest of the team, you know, obviously Gakpo just getting his little sub appearance, Chris Wood blanking. We lost the clean sheet in the first minute for Wolves and Nori. Pickford lost his clean sheet. Hoyson lost his clean sheet. Dango blanked. So it really was like the whole team really just suffered. I think the only returns we got was from Clivert, who got himself a goal. Timber kept a clean sheet, which was one thing. I was actually contemplating getting rid of him for Nori and keeping hold of Anthony Robertson. That would have I think that might have sent me over the edge, to be honest with you. But overall, not a great week. The Red Arrow wasn't actually too bad. It's only about 200,000 places. So I believe at the time of recording this video, we're down to about 1.5 million. So it's not the worst. It's something that we can recover from. It just was one of those game weeks that everyone sort of blanked at the exact same time. So yeah, that's how game week 27 got on. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get a better score and a bigger turnaround in game week 28. Okay, so we're going to move into some key questions around game week 28, and then also with maybe a little bit of a longer view ahead of game week 29, and obviously a wildcard window in game week 30. So the first question we're going to start off with is about Crystal Palace and about Crystal Palace assets, and should we be buying them now? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Mateta in the section below this, which is obviously about injuries and suspensions. But for the time being, I think the question comes down to whether or not you should either A, sell your Palace assets if you've got them, or B, be looking to buy them because they've got a good run of fixtures. Is how many transfers do you have free in, like, saved up, and also are you looking to free hit in 29? Now if you're one of the people who are looking to free hit in game week 29, then by all means keep them, bring them in. It's absolutely fine because you can just free hit that game week and then just change up the squad. I think it's worth saying that if you own them, if you've got enough subs on the bench that you can sort of keep Munoz, keep Mateta, then I think maybe you probably want to do that. Mateta's a little bit different now because of obviously what happened in the FA Cup over the weekend, but I'm going to talk about that in just in a second. I think the other two sort of high-owned players from Crystal Palace are sort of Daniel Munoz and Dean Henderson. Now, if you've got them two, of course you're going to keep them ahead of this game week. You know, Crystal Palace got a fantastic fixture against Ipswich. They then blank in 29, of course, but then they have a great fixture against Southampton in game week 30. So I personally wouldn't be looking to get rid of them. I think if you are going to free hit in 29, you're absolutely fine. If you've got transfers saved up, maybe you could look at sort of just finding some cover for them for that odd game week. But if you haven't got the Crystal Palace players, despite their good fixture in 28, I just think it's time just to leave them alone until you get through 29, especially if you're not planning to free hit or you haven't got a lot of transfers saved up. I don't think it's really worth it. After game week 29, 100% you could attack that game week 30. Obviously, Crystal Palace have a double in game week 32 as well, which is very nice. So yeah, I think the overall consensus about Crystal Palace players is if you've got them, if you've got enough transfers in the bank or you're free hitting in 29, don't worry about it, just keep them. If you haven't got them, don't be buying them yet. Wait for them to go past the blank in 29 and then reassess in game week 30. So that brings us nicely on to Mateta, and we'll start with him first. So we've picked up some sort of injuries and some suspensions, which we're going to talk about. And the three main players we're looking at, first up, we're going to start with Mateta. Now, I'm 95% sure he's going to be out of this game for this coming weekend. Glasner come out after the Millwall game and said that I think he had stitches in the back of his head. If you haven't actually seen the challenge from the Millwall goalkeeper, I would suggest go and look at it on X or, you know, on YouTube, because it really was bad. You know, it was a very high foot, went down the back of his neck. I think it was about 32 stitches they reported after. So I think Glasner said that he's probably going to be ruled out for this game. So if you have Mateta, I think it's a very difficult one because obviously he's not cheap. He's not like 6 and under. He is at a fairly decent price point. Like I think goes back to what I said about the Crystal Palace assets. That if you have, if you've got places on the bench that you can bring him in, you've got adequate subs to bring in, then yeah, I don't mind just benching him because he should be back by game week 30. Because the gap between now going to game week 28 and game week 30 is about sort of 2-3 weeks because we have an international break as well. So I think by the time we get to game week 30, which is obviously Southampton at home, then Crystal Palace have the double in 32. He's probably someone that you're going to want to keep once we get after the international break. So if you've got the means to sort of keep him, I definitely would. Another player who might potentially be injured is Alexander Isak. Now, I'm a little bit more hopeful about this one. I didn't actually expect him to start in the FA Cup game, if truth be told, but he did start. He came off. I don't think his injury is going to be that bad, to be honest with you. I think it was probably just a precautionary one. He kind of got off. He looked like he was fine walking off. Obviously, we'll have to stay tuned to the press conference later in the week. It's a little bit difficult because obviously Eddie Howe doesn't really give us much, but also sometimes just straight up lies in his press conference, as we saw with Anthony Gordon from last season. So I think take it with a pinch of salt. Make sure if you have Isak, obviously you're not going to sell him because they've got a double in 32 as well. And, most of us will have a lot of money tied up into him. So I would say just make sure you've got a decent first sub just in case, he says that everything's going to be fine. And then all of a sudden Isak's just out the squad like he was last week. And finally, Mateta Cunha. Now, I just want to say, if you bought Mateta Cunha in for game week 27, I think you can feel very, very unfortunate, very hard done by because no one saw that suspension coming. It was the 120th minute. The game's looking like it's going to go to penalties. Cunha scored a wonderful goal in the game as well, which just shows how good of a player he is. But he had this thing back in December where he just loses his head, and this time was no different. I think he did headbutt Kirkez. Then as he got sent off, he was going down the tunnel and he started arguing with other people. So if you have Cunha, it's a 100% missing game week 28, 29, and 30 due to the 3-game ban from the red card. It's probably going to end up being more, to be honest with you, after he's already had this once, a couple of months ago, just before Christmas. The FA gave him a retrospective 3-game ban. It's probably going to end up being more now. So I think if you got Cunha and you bought him in last week, like I said, I think you just feel very hard done by, but definitely do sell him. He's too much money to leave on the bench. He, at the bare minimum, is not going to play until game week 31. But like I said, after all the antics that went on down the tunnel as well, I just don't expect to see him back until much later than that. So yeah, if you've got Cunha, I think it's just time just to say, you know what, that transfer just didn't work out. It was very unlucky, and just move him on and cut your losses. Okay, so this is what my game week 28 team is looking like very early on. Obviously, I'm recording this on Monday, so right at the start of the week, so things could change. The reason why there's not an actual transfer section in this video is because I'm sort of 95% sure I'm going to roll this week. I don't really see a transfer that I'm looking to make. There is an outside chance that I bring in Konate for either Timber or someone else in my back line just to try and target this Southampton fixture. I will have enough cover going into game week 29, even though I'm not free hitting. So even if I do get Konate, I can bench him. Greaves isn't exactly the ideal starting player, but it's a player who's going to be playing in 29 regardless. So I'm going to wait and see on that. Like I said, I'm probably more inclined to want to roll and then move into game week 29 with 2 free transfers. But that's the only reason why there's not an actual transfer section in this video. So I've got sort of contrast in defence on this team. As you can see, Pickford is playing against Wolves, so that means Aït-Nouri and Pickford are playing against each other. On the one hand, I want Pickford to keep a clean sheet. I want Aït-Nouri to keep a clean sheet, but I also want Aït-Nouri to get an attack and return as well because he just goes so far forward. And obviously, without Cunha, I think Wolves are going to struggle for creativity, so they might be a little bit more reliant on Aït-Nouri creating from that left-hand side. So, I mean, these two, they're fine for now. They're just going to stay in there. Højlund is playing against Tottenham. Again, not the worst fixture in the world, not the best fixture in the world. I don't mind it. There's not really too many players that I could move to, like I said, other than bringing in Konate for Liverpool. But I'm not sure 100% if I'm going to make that move yet or not. And then last up in the defence is Jurrien Timber against Man United. Now, I'm actually quite happy to have him there. I do think Arsenal will go to Old Trafford and keep a clean sheet. Man United do look quite toothless in attack. So I'm not really too worried about that one, which is why I'm sort of debating about whether or not it's the right move to bring Konate in now, because I'm fairly happy with the back three. I'm not going to get rid of Aït-Nouri before 29 against Southampton. Højlund's fine, Bournemouth could easily go and get a clean sheet at Spurs, and the same thing for Jurrien Timber as well. So yeah, that's our defence for the time being. Okay, onto the midfield now. So it's pretty much the same midfield as last week was. And Burmo's going to be in there, Kluivert's going to be in there, and then we've got the 2 big boys, Palmer and Salah. This probably is going to be Cole Palmer's last week for me. There is maybe an outside shout for captaincy differentials. Now, I know how crazy that sounds because obviously Liverpool are playing Southampton at home, which you think is just Salah all day, every day. I think the only consideration and the only reason why I'm considering going to Cole Palmer, and it's a very small consideration, I must say, and especially after last week, it kind of, if there's any week that's going to put me off, it probably was because of that. But my only thing is that Liverpool should turn up and beat Southampton quite comfortably. That Southampton game is actually in between two. It's in between PSG. They've got the first leg this coming week, and then they've got the second leg in the next week. Now, it all depends on how Liverpool get on in the first game. If Liverpool, sort of go there, cruise through, sort of put 2-3 past PSG and, keep the clean sheet, then maybe there's not so much of a desperation to keep Salah rested. But if they go there, they maybe lose the game or they draw the game and then that second game becomes that much more important, maybe there's just an outside chance that Salah, Trent, certain Liverpool assets maybe get a rest against Southampton because Liverpool should be able to get through them without having those type of players there. For what it's worth, I do think Salah will start. I think he'll probably just end up getting brought off a little bit earlier. And I think the question you have to ask yourself is, would you rather have Cole Palmer at home against Leicester for 90 minutes or Salah for, let's say, between 60 and 80 at home against Southampton? I think the answer is going to be Mo Salah. The form he's in this season, the way he's playing football, it's just, he kind of is the guy you'd sort of want to just put your captaincy on and just leave it there. So I think for the time being, captaincy is going to be on Salah. Maybe there's an outside chance at Cole Palmer, but for me personally, I'm going to have to wait and see what happens in that Liverpool versus PSG game midweek. And finally, onto the forwards. We're going to start off with Chris Wood. Blank last week. A little bit of a tricky game this week against Manchester City. Obviously, they do leak chances, and hopefully, fingers crossed, when Chris Wood does get them, he does usually put them away. So I'm happy to just keep him there. Cody Gakpo is my risk, but I just didn't see any need to take him out before Southampton. It's not a guarantee that he's going to start. Maybe the team on midweek against PSG will kind of give us more of an inkling as to who's going to play in that game against Southampton. I could see a sort of Jota and Nunes sort of double up to try and rest, Diaz and Gakpo. So we'll have to wait and see. But for me, Gakpo, he's just got the high upside, especially against Southampton. If he does start the game, I'm going to want to have him in my team. So he's fine there. And of course, Alexander Isak, it is a little bit of touch and go at the moment, just waiting to see what happens with his injury. But I think he'll be fine. I do think that, he, like I said, he walked off, looked like he was okay. So we'll have to wait and see for the press conference towards the back end of the week. But fingers crossed, hopefully he will be fit and ready to go. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please don't forget to drop a thumbs up and subscribe down below. I will be back towards the back end of the week, probably Thursday after the Champions League games go, with a final team selection video, which I will update you guys if I have made any transfers or if I'm just looking to roll. We'll go over some more key questions around the game week deadline. If you guys have got any questions you want answered in that video, feel free to drop it in the comments down below, whether it's about your team, my team, just FPL in general. Just leave it in the comments down below and I'll make sure to include them in that video. But thank you guys so much for watching this video and I'll catch you guys next time.